enterprising, unique, thoughtful. Those are just a few words that can describe my first guest and actress, April Matthis. You may have seen her star as Toni in Toni Stone off-Broadway, or as the narrator in Help, also off-Broadway. During her time on stage, she has created roles that have illustrated the fullness of Black women in their humanity. She is currently making her Broadway debut in the Broadway production of August Wilson's The Piano Lesson. It is my honor to welcome Obie Award-winning April Matthis as my first guest on the Mira Elizabeth Show. Hi, April. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, and it's so good to hear from you. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you didn't know this, but you're actually the first guest on my show. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
thank you. Great.
Yeah.
Started off with a bang.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for joining me on the first episode. So, if you will, I would love for my audience to get to know who you are. Who is April Matthis?
Who isn't April Matthis?
Interesting.
No, I'm joking. I'm an actor in New York City, originally from Texas. I've been acting since about over 20 years now. I'm originally from Texarkana, Texas. I went to UT Austin undergrad as an English major. I've been in New York since 2001. I started off doing theater downtown in New York's kind of experimental theater scene, and have worked in a lot of different world premieres of new plays in New York City, and also regionally and internationally, and have also done some television and film work and a couple of independent film projects, and also co-written an independent short film, and currently starring on Broadway alongside Samuel L. Jackson, Danielle Brooks, and John David Washington in August Wilson's The Piano Lesson.
Wow, that's awesome. You've come so far. So now you've made your Broadway debut and you're officially a Broadway actress. How does that feel?
Feels good. Feels lovely and nice and cool and awesome.
And how did you decide that acting would be your career?
It wasn't until I took this class in college, my last year of college, that was called Actual Lives, and it was cross-referenced with women's studies and performance studies. And it was kind of like a performance art class. You could kind of do whatever you want, make your own performance. And the idea was anything can be performance art. Like, we're all performing a version of ourselves when we, interact with anyone. That could be considered some type of performance. And so I got really interested in it that way. And from there, I just took it upon myself to start auditioning for plays locally in Austin, and got cast in a play and just started acting from there. So yeah, by that time I was like in my early 20s when I thought, oh, this is something, this makes sense. This is what I've kind of been doing at home and in my imaginative play since I was a kid, and now there's an outlet for it.
Right, of course. So as you were coming up, did you have any favorite plays?
It's interesting because I didn't grow up seeing a lot of theater. As I said, we were in a small town, so I think the first play I saw was some like children's musical where there's that song, "There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza." Do you know that?
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but I saw that and I didn't think that that was for me. So I would read Shakespeare in English class, and I was interested in that. I think once I got to college, I read Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and a friend of mine and I reenacted some scenes from that. Um, but I didn't grow up seeing plays as much as reading them. So yeah, I mean,
That,
The Raisin in the Sun, I think that's probably the thing I had the most connection to. But again, I hadn't seen it done. I'd only read it.
of course, and that's a classic. And so, since you say that you weren't surrounded by a lot of theater, when you eventually were and started getting casted in plays, do you have any influences? Do you have any influences now?
Carrying a film or carrying a play. I've done both, and they're really satisfying. But I am really interested in people who make unusual choices and people who get cast in unusual roles. Um, it's been really interesting and inspiring to watch Viola Davis's career, because she started off in the theater, and I haven't seen her perform on stage because she was performing on stages kind of before I got to New York and before she was on my radar as a stage actress. But of course, I admire her television and film work. I don't think it's the same kind of acting that I necessarily identify with as far as my acting style, but I like how she's been able to executive produce and create interesting roles for herself, like Woman King or How to Get Away with Murder. And, and at the same time has done pretty much everything you can think of. She's done Broadway, she's done off-Broadway, she's been in Tyler Perry movies. She had her own TV detective show. She's done action movies at this point. So I admire her career versatility. But as far as acting style, I think it would be more of those character actors. And yeah, I would say Black female character actors. There are certain performances that I like Kimberly Elise in Beloved, I thought was really amazing. Tandy Newton in certain roles. But yeah, I think what I'm speaking to is that I don't get to see a lot of opportunities for Black actresses to just be weird and kind of undefinable. It's like you're a mom, or you're a detective, or you're a supportive wife, or you're a supportive detective wife that's a mom. And I'm kind of interested in other things, other identities.
Of course, and that's completely understandable because there's already so few roles for Black women in the professional theater world, so that all those roles are in specific categories. So, I mean, it seems like the piano lesson is just a source of pride and joy for you. So, can you tell me what a day in the life is like at the piano lesson on Broadway?
Um, sure. I'll tell you like something like a 2-show day, because that is a whole day at the Ethel Barrymore Theater where we perform the piano lesson. So today is a day where I have kind of like the morning to do what I need to do, live my life, run errands, do household chores, clean up, look at another script or whatever I need to do. And then I'll head to the theater. But on a 2-show day like Wednesday or Saturday, it's pretty much all about the show. So what I will do is, pack my provisions, like whatever lunch I'm going to eat, or, get breakfast out of the way, or anything that I want to take snack wise. And maybe also some comforts for between shows. I might take my little portable Theragun massager for my back and neck, because acting in the American theater, it's like repetitive motion. You're doing the same moves all the time, so sometimes you get stiffness in different places. So I'll bring something like that, bring my tennis ball also to work out any sore spots on my body. And then I'll get to the theater. I like to get there like about an hour early, even though I don't go on until an hour into the show. I still like to get there early, get my bearings, eat whatever lunch I'm going to eat before get settled, and then start the slow process of my putting on my show makeup, because I have this very intense navy blue smoky eye designed by our makeup designer. And I'll start to get into that. Then I'll go down for a moment of connection with the cast about 5 minutes before we go on. And then I'll finish slowly getting dressed. I'll listen to the first hour of the play. And as I'm listening to the play, I will get dressed out of my street clothes into my undergarments, which are period undergarments. So I have like stockings and garter, like my grandmother and your great grandmother probably used to wear under this dress. And then I'll get my mic on and my show wig on, and then with the wig supervisor will help me do that, and then one of my dressers will come and help me get my garters fastened, because that's the hardest thing for me to do. And then help me get into my costume, my dress for the first look. And by then we're at intermission. And so then I'll say my lines out loud with the recording app that I use, where I've recorded like everyone else's lines and my line for the scenes that I do. So I'll say those out loud. I'll get my mic taped to me so it doesn't move around while I'm in the scene. And by then intermission is over, and I'm getting ready for my upcoming scene. So I'll usually check in with Danielle Brooks, who plays Bernice. We'll kind of say hi, have a good show to each other, because this is the first time I'm coming on stage, and she's been on stage the whole first act. And we're going to meet on stage later. So when she's starting her first scene in Act 2, I will kind of get myself psyched up, maybe singing along with her entrance music, or, looking at myself in the mirror in my dress and kind of dancing in the style of the 1930s. And then I'll make my way downstairs, and I have my little water bottle with me and my mask, because we're all supposed to be masked backstage until we go on. And so I'll listen to her scene, and then I'll connect with John David Washington, my scene partner, and then we'll kind of prepare ourselves, and then we'll dance into the scene. And so we do that, dance out of the scene, and then I go upstairs and get changed, get out of my first outfit, get into my second outfit for the second scene with the help of a dresser and get my wig looked at by the wig supervisor because sometimes it gets messed up in the scene. And then come down like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before my last entrance, do the show, finish the show, and then go out, say hi to people, get some food, take a nap, and get ready to do it all over again.
Your character, Grace, in the show is the girlfriend of Boy Willie, who wants to sell the family's piano. So I want to ask, what do you bring to the character and why is she important to the show?
Well, Grace is very important to the show. I think it's funny that you use the term girlfriend because it's actually like this is their first date, kind of. And so the idea is Boy Willie and his friend Lyman have decided to go out for a night on the town. And what you see in the first act is mostly the battle between it. The first act establishes, like, here's the central issue of the play. Boy Willie wants to sell the family piano. His sister Bernice wants to keep it in the house and keep it in the family. He wants to sell it so he can get the land of this white family that used to own their family and sold their family for a piano, for this piano which has their ancestors' faces carved on it. So this is a really important family heirloom. And we get a little bit of a break from the back and forth between, you're not selling the piano, I'm definitely going to sell the piano. And we see, like, why do we care about these people in their lives? And Boy Willie is a single man. He doesn't have any kids. He just got out of jail. He is not even really attached to the North here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is where this takes place, where the family lives and where the piano is. He wants to go back to the South and become a farmer and like have land and build wealth from that for the family. His friend Lyman, on the other hand, just got out of jail too with him, and the police are still looking for him, and he doesn't want to go back and work the land. He doesn't want to be a farmer. He wants to see what it's like up in the North. And so for them, going out is a taste of like, what's it like to be in the North right now? What are the opportunities available for Black people at this time period? And what Grace represents is there's a thriving nightlife. You know, there's Black people who work during the day and then can enjoy themselves and have a little bit of disposable income to, you know, buy some drinks, go to the movies, go dancing, you know, meet someone, have a relationship. If you're a woman like Grace, you can also like spend a lot of money on yourself and buy a really beautiful red dress and, you know, fishnet stockings and red high heels, you know, and, you know, get to feel pretty and desirable. And she, unlike his sister, is not someone who has a child. She's a single lady, and, you know, she has one boyfriend that, you know, took off with some other girl. And so she's kind of out and looking, you know. And what's interesting about Grace is we see a woman from that time period who's as free as any man could be, you know, like the way that Lyman and Boy Willie say, let's go out tonight, let's go find some women. She can say, let's go out tonight to her friend Dolly, let's go find some men, you know, and it's given equal weight. It's not like, oh, well, she shouldn't do that. It's like, she can do that. She has money. She doesn't have any obligations. She can have fun. And so what gets set in place dramaturgically in the play is we get to see Boy Willie not focused on the piano and getting the piano out of the house. We get to see him like just enjoying himself, like a person who's full of life and is also charismatic and charming and sexy and can woo a woman like Grace and get her to come to his house and possibly spend the night with him. And so I feel like in the second act too, it's so much about like these characters being alive as people, like what's important to them, like what's important about relationships. Bernice has a guy who wants to marry her, and her husband died 3 years ago. Her daughter's father passed away, and she has another guy who literally says to her, "I'm standing here right now, Bernice. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be standing here waiting for you." So you have this sense of like the time to decide what you want to do with your life is now. And part of the issue with the piano is, do you use the piano to make a future for yourself, or do you use the piano to honor the past? But one thing, without giving away too many spoilers, that makes Grace important is the life force that she is makes her also attractive and attracted to not only Boy Willie, but to his friend Lyman. And this figures the next day when Lyman is supposed to help Boy Willie take the piano out of the house. He gets a little bit distracted because he runs into Grace. And so now there's a situation where Grace is still connected to the family. It's not just a one-night stand. And the thing is, Boy Willie can't move the piano out of the house by himself. He needs Lyman. And if Lyman is distracted, then that's going to make it hard. So that's all I'll say about that. But I think I've realized that Grace is there for a reason. She has her own take on the ghost. She's a full person and she takes up space. And that it's fun to get to do, and it's fun to get to be sexy and to seduce and be seduced. And that's something that in my kooky offbeat roles that I seek out and I like, it for somebody like me to play this kind of like saucy siren, I feel like I make it a weird and interesting kind of kooky thing to be, instead of like, oh, of course she's going to come in. It's like, wait, what? Who is that?
Right, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you got to bring that to the role. What was it like to be in a play and work with the likes of legends such as Samuel Jackson and LaTanya Richardson Jackson? What was the creative process like?
They made it really normal to be in the room with them. Like, my first day in, I was supposed to, swab my nose and do my own COVID test. Like, that's the first thing you do coming back, getting into a process. And I had my little COVID test in my hand, thinking I was just going to go in this room by myself and take it. As soon as I opened the door, there's Samuel L. Jackson, and so it's like, like, oh, okay, here's this super famous face that I've been seeing, like since I was, a very young person. There's his face. There he is. You're working with him right now. Here he is. So I'm like, oh, hi, I wasn't really ready to meet you. And he's like, hi, who are you? I'm like, oh yes, I have to also introduce myself. But other than that, like initial like, oh wow, this is what you're doing. You're working with these folks. Um, Once I got over like the initial like, there's the face, then it was just like, okay, now let's read this play. Now let's get on our feet. Now let's see if we can remember our lines. It was the same as any other process. And like, maybe the difference is when we go outside of the rehearsal space or the theater space, then there's a certain amount of attention that they get from like the world reacting to them, because the world's not working with them in a way that makes it normal. It's like, oh my God. And with John David, it's like, can I be your girlfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? Like,
Wow.
but inside the room, I see him like being silly with the child actors, or like eating chips, or like working on his script. And it's just like, we're all just here doing the same job. We all have the same job.
Is there any moment of the show that resonates with you in particular?
In Boy Willie's speech, one of the last speeches he gives to Bernice fighting for the piano. And he talks about like his heart beating as a Black man in America. And he's like, some people get scared to hear nigger's heart beating. They think you ought to lay low with that heart. And he goes on to say, like, my heart beats just as loud as the next fella's, and sometimes it beats louder. And he says the world is white people don't like to hear a nigger's heart beating. And he's like, I'm in the world just like everyone else. My mother didn't birth me for nothing. The world is a better place because of me. Mm-hmm. And that really resonates with me in this time where I feel like the conversation about race in this country has changed to where it's not like Black people just want to exist, but like, of course we exist, and we don't have to fight just for a little corner. Like, this is ours. This is our birthright, our human right. We built this country on our backs. So we are going to take up space and demand the rightful place that we have in this country. And it's not just barely to meet up to some white picket fence standard, but it's to our own standards, and those, whatever those are as limitless and unique as we are. And that part of his speech feels particularly loud to me in these last few years.
That's so meaningful. So I know that you are starring in a new play with William Jackson Harper coming up soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a play called Primary Trust by Ebony Booth, and that's going to be at the Roundabout Theater in the spring of this year. And it's a really, really beautiful story about adult friendship, I'll say. Will, whom I've known for years from like the New York downtown theater scene, actually, all those weird little plays that I was doing, he was down there doing weird little plays too. And we were seeing each other do our weird little plays. And being like the two kind of Black nerdy people doing the weird plays in downtown New York. It's his character is this guy who is kind of a lonely guy, but who has one very important friend that just so happens no one else can see. And I play multiple roles, a series of waitresses at this tiki bar where he's a regular. And eventually, my multiple characters kind of become one waitress in particular that befriends him. And it's kind of like about a man who had a traumatic childhood and like has had trouble finding his place in the world. And it's about like this friendship that kind of helps him navigate his place in the world as an adult, coming out of a childhood trauma. So that's how I can talk about it. But it's a really, really, really beautiful, beautiful play.
So, April, I've had a great time talking to you and getting to know you today. Thank you so much for being the first guest on the first episode of my podcast.
All the best to you. I can't wait to listen to it and more podcasts after that. And all the best to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Mira Elizabeth Show. I hope you are inspired. Be sure to download, follow me on your socials, and stream the next episode.